to another one of my Facebook Live broadcasts. I have been doing this now for a couple of weeks and trying to talk to my constituents at least 3 times a week directly about what's going on in our community around the coronavirus. I want to thank the Bee again for giving us its Facebook platform last Wednesday night, this Wednesday night, so that I can reach more viewers and more people from Sacramento. I have some questions that I'll be answering tonight that were compiled by the Bee Assistant City Manager Ryan Lillis based on what they've been hearing from readers. But first I want to make a couple comments. I want to start with wishing everyone a happy Passover and a happy Easter. And of course, Ramadan starts on the 23rd of April, so a happy Ramadan as well. This may be the most memorable Holy Week that any of us ever experienced, regardless of our faiths. And while we celebrate different traditions and have different faiths, there is a commonality to all that we celebrate and all that we commemorate. For the tenets of all of our major faiths remind us that generations that came before us have lived with tremendous challenges, have overcome great oppression and great challenges in life, and have found a way to make life better, not just for people of faith, but for all of humanity. And tonight, the Passover story tells the story of the Jewish people's freedom from enslavement in ancient Egypt. And we're going to talk tonight about the 10 plagues, which God imposed upon the Pharaoh as a message to let the Jewish people go. And of course, in 2020, all of us around the world are dealing with an 11th plague, the coronavirus. We all know how the story of Passover ended. It ended with the freedom of the Jewish people. And in the same way, across all of our faiths and all of our traditions, we all have to celebrate and commemorate these solemn occasions this week and later this month with the full confidence that just like the Jewish people, we too are going to be free from this 11th plague. And we will. You know, I've been on a lot of conference calls and a lot of Zoom calls with a lot of stakeholders and a lot of constituents. And an owner of a small business said something to me that really said it beautifully, and I think will stick with me for a long time. She said, "We have been humbled by this, but we are not defeated by this." That sums it up for me, and I think it sums it up for all of us living through this very difficult time. This coronavirus chapter will in fact end, even though it seems like it will never end. And we will always, after this, savor and never take for granted what it means to be outside together, what it means to be part of community, what it means to eat in a restaurant again, what it means to go see a show, what it means to be able to play or be a fan for the sport or the sports that we love. And so we are being humbled by this, and people are hurting and suffering in very real ways. But we will not be defeated by this, just as prior generations were not defeated by the great challenges they faced as well. Before I take your questions, I want to talk about mental health, I want to talk about food insecurity, and I want to talk about an idea. It's not an original idea, but it's an idea that I want us to bring to Sacramento. A public display we can make as a city to support our healthcare workers and brighten things up a bit in these difficult and dark times. First of all, mental health. Last night we held another digital city council meeting, and the emotions were running high. Earlier that day, the Natomas Unified School District, together with, its Superintendent Chris Evans, its Board President Lisa Kaplan, and the North of Natomas Council member Angelique Ashby, put out the news that two high school students, one from Natomas and one from Twin Rivers, had committed suicide in two unrelated incidents. They did the right thing by being upfront and transparent about what occurred. Because by talking about suicide publicly, which we don't often do, by talking about mental health publicly, which we don't often do, Natomas was appealing to young people, not only in their district, but in our entire city, to reach out for help if they need it, and for the adults around them to be on the lookout for signs that their teen may be having a hard time. And after all, isn't having a hard time when you're a teen understandable? And especially now, we're all struggling to establish routines when much of the normal structure of our lives is gone. We're struggling to get along without being around physically the loved ones, our family, many of our extended families, and our friends who we love being with and who often guide us and mentor us through our days. We're struggling to get along without the sports and without the physical activity routines that keep us healthy and reduce stress. We are struggling because we cannot be physically together as we're so used to as a community. And of course, many of our families and our seniors are struggling with unemployment and furloughs and economic insecurity, and even getting the basics, the food that they need to eat. There are resources out there where people can get help, and I want to share some of them with you again tonight. If you need someone to talk to about what's going on and what you're feeling, or if you're depressed or you're desperate or you're thinking about suicide, there are a number of places where you can call, and we're going to put these on my Facebook page so you don't have to write all these down, but I'm just going to recite them. Now, we've got the California Peer Run Warm Line, 855-845-7415. California also runs suicide and crisis hotlines, and a text line you can reach by texting HOME to 741-741. California also has a specific youth crisis hotline that offers assistance for people ages 12 to 24 every day around the clock. You can reach out by calling 1-800-843-5200. As I said, we're going to post and tweet all of this information. And your city leaders are all working together to see if we can raise the money to actually expand some of these resources so that every teenager in Sacramento who needs somebody to talk to can talk to somebody right away. It is a big priority. And of course, we've talked about food a lot over the last couple of weeks. And I've talked about some of the heroic efforts by our restaurateurs, by our food banks, by people who are just volunteering to be out there to actually deliver food to people. Incredible what is going on out there. But tonight I just want to say, if you're watching this and you need food, you can have food delivered. Call 211 and you will be able to get in touch with someone who can either tell you where you can pick up food. And around the community now, there are big food distribution centers at some of our high schools, but we can get you directly in touch with someone who can deliver food to you or where you can pick up food. I would also recommend that you go to the sacramentofoodbank.org, click on the COVID-19 Emergency Response tab, and you will find a list of food distribution sites. Again, we will post this on all of our social media sites. The need is great out there. Sac City Unified is supplying 36,000 breakfasts and lunch lunches for families to pick up every day for their low-income students. A contribution from the Donate for Sacramento Fund last week allowed the food bank to supplement the school district program with 2 bags of groceries each for 1,380 families. We expect those numbers to grow and the need to grow, and we're working with our state leaders to ensure that the food supply is replenished, because it's not just a matter of food distribution, it's a matter of also supporting our family farmers, because we need them to grow and produce the food if we're able to deliver it. People are helping in so many ways. An update on the Donate for Sacramento Fund this week. We made our second round of funding available to organizations working directly with individuals and businesses. We've helped more than 175 families with direct support, 49 small businesses on our commercial corridors, a big effort to help the restaurants along Stockton Boulevard. And when we talk about restaurants, we think about the downtown and midtown, but there are restaurants all over our community, of course, that need and deserve the help. Half the money the fund has raised, it's over $1 million, by the way, has come from individual donors like yourself. Makes me proud, again, of Sacramento. Today, in a separate effort, we announced that 26 restaurants, breweries, and coffee shops all over the city would get direct micro grants of about $1,000 each as a result of the GoFundMe campaign called Save Our Local Restaurants. The issue of the economic devastation that is occurring in our small businesses is top of mind. And I want to remind you now that the more substantial help is coming from the federal government and the federal stimulus programs. Not only is there $350 billion of what they call the Paycheck Protection Plan, small business assistance, forgivable loans in many instances for small businesses, but now the Congress is talking about extending that and adding more money to that very important resource. Here locally, we are working with our Metro Chamber of Commerce and our Sacramento Asian Pacific Chamber of Commerce to set up one-stop shops for small businesses to be able to navigate through this process. I'm also talking directly with our local banks to see what it's going to take to work out all the bugs and the frustrations that I know a lot of small businesses have had in the early days in terms of getting through and being able to access this money. But I want to remind you that through the SAC Asian Pacific Chamber and the Sacramento Metro Chamber, they now have a rapid response triage hotline. The number is 833-391-1919, 833-391-1919, and we will post that again. A quick word on homelessness. Last night, the City Council approved its $15 million plan that we will use, and all that money is from state and federal emergency dollars allocated for COVID-19 to create 990 separate units for homeless people. And of course, the first priority, as I said a couple of days ago, are for people who are symptomatic of COVID-19. But we're going to extend the outreach to those who are not symptomatic, but who have existing. We are going to be thinking, preparing, and actually putting together the resources so that we can address the second half once we get people in, and that is to rapidly rehouse people who have been outdoors, will now be indoors, so that they don't return to the streets after the motel leases run out and after the trailer leases run out. This is an incredible opportunity and also a great challenge. Tonight, I want to announce one more symbolic way that we can come together and collectively show our support for the healthcare workers and first responders who are on the front lines of the COVID-19 crisis. A few weeks ago, I saw that people and institutions in Great Britain were lighting up their landmarks and homes with blue light to support healthcare workers. That's been happening every week now. Blue is the color of England's National Health Service. It's also the color used by most healthcare providers in their logos. It is considered a calm and a steady color, something we really need right now. I really think it is a beautiful gesture and suggested that we do the same here. Starting tonight, City Hall, the Memorial Auditorium, and the underpass at McKinley Village will be lit with blue lights. We will be working to add other significant structures by the end of the week, including the Old Sacramento Tunnel, the street lights on the Capitol Mall, and the bridge by the Sacramento City College, So we can all take part in this by displaying blue lights on our own homes if we have them. You know, I know for those who celebrate Christmas that it is April, not December, but bring out your blue lights. And for those who don't celebrate Christmas, it might be time to light our homes for the first time. Let's do this to show solidarity, not only to our healthcare workers and first responders, but to all the essential workers who face additional public health risks and stress because of the jobs they're doing to protect us and to keep us fed. I want to thank Ryan Moore and Hector Barone from our City Public Works Department for working so hard, in addition to all of their other additional duties here, for helping to put this together. I also want to put in a plug for the Health Corps that Governor Newsom started. Huge response across the state and in Sacramento. But if you want to volunteer at healthcarevolunteers.ca to sign up, and we will use you, if not in Sacramento, in some other part of the state. All right, let me go to the questions that you have asked. And I know these are the common questions that are out there, and I'll try to answer all of them the best that I can. Question 1, what are my thoughts on closing parks? The county is closing its parks this weekend and then plans to reopen them. Should there be tighter restrictions on city parks and golf courses? So yesterday the county put out an additional order that does put greater restrictions on the use of parks, and the city will follow the county order. Now, we're not closing parks, but what we are doing are closing all of the equipment and all of the specific activities in parks, like tennis courts, which, by the way, I am an avid tennis player, and so this is a tough one for me, but I accept it, because anything that we can do to continue doing what we're doing in Sacramento, which is to flatten that curve. And as I've said to you earlier, Sacramento continues on a very good trend. And so I can sacrifice my tennis for a couple of weeks or however long is necessary if it means that we may get through this with fewer people sick and fewer people dying. But it's not just tennis, it's the basketball courts, it's the playgrounds, and this is really hard. Nobody wants to do this, and this is a very, very delicate balance, but this isn't forever. And so let's just do it and be able to look back and say, we all sacrificed, we all did something to protect the health of our entire community. So yes, parks are not closed. You can still go out, get some fresh air, maintain your physical distance. But a lot of the activities around parks, including picnics, by the way, there should be no picnics this holiday weekend. Please don't do that. I know that the weather will be nice, and Easter is Sunday. We just can't have people gathering in even small groups. Do I think the city should put a pause on the anti-camping ordinance, including for camps at City Hall? So this question has come up quite a bit. There are no sweeps of camps that are going on, nor should there be sweeps of camps that are going on. On the other hand, where people are gathered in tight quarters, I think it is appropriate for law enforcement to ask people to separate, for the same reason we're asking people to physically distance in every other way. Let's talk about City Hall for a moment. The city did pass a resolution many months ago where we said, because of the lack of sufficient shelter, that the homeless could sleep at City Hall at night. And we're continuing to allow that. There are some overhangs, and that's the compassionate thing to do. But we are asking people, once day breaks, to disperse, in part because that has been the rule, and there are a lot of people coming, still some people coming into City Hall, even though more people are telecommuting. But the main thing is we don't want people to be in close physical proximity to each other. Hopefully the question becomes largely unnecessary to ask and answer in the weeks ahead, because we are getting 990 people into motel rooms and trailers, getting them out and housed every 2 weeks to 4 weeks to 6 weeks, and getting more than 1,000 people indoors. That's keeping our eye on the real prize here. Has the crisis slowed or otherwise impacted the momentum the city was making on building shelters at WX and in Meadowview, as well as the cabins in North Sacramento? So the money that we have for the 990 hotels and motels is a combination of city and county money that is in direct response to the coronavirus crisis. And so we still have the money from the previous state allocations, some of the private money that I've been able to raise, to continue with the Meadowview Women's Shelter and the shelter at WX. Both of them should be up and running within the next couple months. When it comes to the cabin communities in North Sacramento, the City Council did make a decision last night to pause for 1 month, because I want to make sure that we hold on to that money, which is almost $5 million, to determine whether or not we need it to rapidly rehouse the people who we're putting in the hotels. And so I hope that we're going to find a way to get enough resources so that we can continue that North Sacramento cabin project, which is really good, really hopeful, focused on transition age youth, and at the same time have the money so that we can aggressively get as many people who are getting off the streets into the motels and into the trailers into permanent housing. Next question. The county extended its stay-at-home order to May 1st. What can you say to residents who are both nervous about the crisis and are now looking at 3 more weeks of sheltering in place? Well, I can say to you that this is crappy. This is a crappy situation. This is hard. And it's harder on some people who are hurting worse than others. I mean, people who are out of work, people who are dealing with difficult domestic situations, people who are trying to work and teach their kids at the same time. People's lives have been disrupted in very real ways. And the best way to ensure that this doesn't go on any longer than it has to go on is to do what we have been doing, which is to continue to work from home where you can, to continue to wear a mask when you are out in public for necessary functions like going to the grocery store, to do what is awkward and unorthodox and uncomfortable, because we're doing okay in Sacramento, and if we can write it out, it will end sooner. That's not a perfect answer, but it is the best answer that I have, and it is consistent with the best advice that I think all of us in leadership positions have been getting and have been trying to communicate, is follow the advice of the experts. Follow the advice of the scientists who are telling us that while we're doing better in California, while we're doing better in Sacramento, now is exactly the wrong time to stop, because if we do, then we're likely to see the kind of uptick that will require this to go on longer. But back to what we were talking about earlier around mental health and around the way people are feeling about this. If you are feeling like, oh my God, I cannot handle this for another second, couple of things. One, realize that you're not alone. And two, there is a lot of support out there. You just have to access it. And there are people with training, there are people of compassion, and there are people who you can talk to vent, to air it out, and to also talk through what you might do to make it a little bit easier. How are we going to celebrate the end of this crisis? So this is maybe a question that in part answers the previous question, because I think we all ought to be thinking about and imagining what we want to do in this community when this is all over. And you know, I was going to give my State of the City address, which has now been canceled, on making Sacramento the next great festival city in America. We've all heard about South by Southwest in Austin, Texas, and how they started with a book fair some 25 years ago and a music festival, and how it turned into this international gathering for people to celebrate every part of art and culture and life in America. And they get millions of people every year. And so Sacramento, I think, is primed to start doing something like that. I want us to think about holding the biggest music, theater, picnic festival that we can envision or imagine when this thing is over. I want every mall flooded with people. I want every neighborhood having big parties. I want us to have music on as many street corners as we can. I would like to use it not just to have us reconnect with one another, but maybe to continue to raise some money for the businesses and the community-based organizations and the arts organizations that are going to need help for the long haul. And so we can't plan a date, obviously, but I've talked to our Visit Sacramento leadership, and we can start thinking about this, and we're going to start thinking about it because we need to have one whale of a community party when this is over. And the other thing I would like to do, it is a tradition when a sports team wins a national championship for the city to hold a ticker tape parade for them. I want Sacramento to hold a ticker tape parade for its healthcare workers and its first responders when this thing is over. I think we could put together one heck of a parade where we celebrate and we honor those who stayed outside while all of us were required to stay inside. So those are a couple of ideas. More to come. The governor said last week he would be surprised if there are full stadiums for NFL and college football games in California when the season starts. As the mayor of an NBA city, do you think the NBA will or should return to a normal schedule this year? I don't know the answer. I don't think they will return to a normal schedule this year. And I think it's a real bummer. But in perspective, there are more serious and sad things that are going on right now. And so I look at it this way. There are going to be many more NBA seasons. There are going to be many Major League Soccer seasons in Sacramento. We will have plenty to celebrate in the future, playoff runs and championships and all kinds of excitement. This year, probably not going to happen. If it does, in some form, I think we will be lucky. But I put it in perspective and say, we'll get on with that stuff. Let's take care of the people who are really hurting like now, just like the Kings did with putting forward Sleep Train Arena. That was such a cool thing, and I think it spoke to their priorities and their perspective as well. They're running a business, and you better believe they want to get back to fill in the Golden One Center. But in the meantime, we're all focused on saving lives, keeping people healthy, and rebuilding the infrastructure of our community and helping those who are hurting. That's what matters. So, in conclusion, everyone looks for different inspiration, and I read history, and I've gone back to reading Churchill in the latest Erik Larson book, and I just love the story about how Churchill in May of 1940 prepared the British people for the inevitable bombing onslaught from the Nazis. And France had fallen, and it appeared that all hope was lost for the small little island known as Great Britain. And Churchill rallied his country, and he made them believe that the terror that they were feeling and the hopelessness that many of them were feeling would not last. And it was replaced by an incredible spirit of solidarity where people did everything they could to help each other and to build fast and to do whatever it took to turn back what appeared to be an easy defeat into a great victory. And of course, they didn't do it alone. And of many of the great words that Churchill spoke, I love what he said in May of 1940 when France had fallen. And he said to the British people that they will not give up, that they will win the war, and if they do what he asked them to make the sacrifices that he asked them to make, that 1,000 years from now, people would look back and say of England, this was our finest hour. Well, it's 2020. There's not a world war. I'm not sure anything could compare to that. But a lot of people are dying, and a lot of people are sick, and a lot of people are suffering. And a lot of great sacrifices are being made, including the sacrifices that we're having to make in our community, which again pale in comparison to what the people in our country and throughout the world had to deal with during that prior period of time. But if we can just keep building the spirit of community, if we can continue to uplift those that are hurting, we too will look back on this era in our generation and say, for Sacramento, for the state of California, for this country, that this too was our finest hour. That's what I believe. And I believe we're up to it. And I wish everyone tonight a very happy Passover. I'll be with you again Friday to wish you all a happy Easter. Stay safe, stay inside, keep the faith. There are better days ahead. Thank you.